Kevin Haig.
Thank you very much, Mr Chair. This is my first call in the committee stage on this bill, and I take the call actually largely because of the extreme narrowing of focus. It was interesting in the debate, the previous debate, to hear Sarah Dowie speak about her experience as a parent of premature babies. I'm sure I'm not alone in this House in speaking as the parent of a child with disabilities. And I want to pick up on some of the questions that I believe are unanswered about the scope of the provisions in this new Part 7. And in particular, an issue that was raised by Jacinda Ardern in relation to babies with cardiac conditions. A cardiac condition in and of itself, I'm not sure, and I'd be interested in the member and the Chair's advice, as to whether or not such a condition would qualify the parents of a child with such a condition for this extended parental leave in this new Part 7 or not. Because those children may well have other disabilities that are not yet apparent, because at the point that a child is born, the medical staff, all of those surrounding that child are focused on keeping the child alive, dealing with the cardiac condition that the child presents with, and many of the other disabilities that frequently accompany such a cardiac condition will not become apparent until later in life. So very clearly that is a child with disabilities, but whether that child will qualify for the definition that's in the new Part 7, I think is something that's very important for us to tease out. Mr Chair, it's gone now, but the paediatric cardiology ward at Green Lane Hospital was a very sad place to be. It was filled with babies in incubators, or babies otherwise hooked up to monitors and other machines, babies on very heavy medications, babies that in many cases had experienced or would experience in that first part of their lives surgery, open heart surgery, and it's a ward that was populated by parents who were living in a daze, who were completely disconnected from their ordinary lives, from the world outside of that paediatric cardiology ward, and those were parents who were in desperate need, Mr Chair, of support, of time out to be with their baby, of time out to adjust to those new circumstances. Those parents are usually sleep deprived. I understand, Mr Chair, of course, that that's a common experience for parents, but for parents of babies who are at risk of dying from the impairment that they have sustained, the particular shock is extraordinary. And Mr Chair, it goes on, because even if those parents are lucky enough to have their baby come home with them, I can assure the House that the anxiety continues. The anxiety of your child being asleep and not knowing whether they will wake. The anxiety of not knowing whether your child will survive the rigours of the heavy medication that they're taking. And so, Mr Chair, the particular need for this group of parents of babies who have sustained an impairment is extreme. And that's why, Mr Chair, I think it's important that the House hears from the member and the Chair as to whether or not this group of parents who do have this particular need are going to receive some extra support. Mr. Chair? Mr. Chair?
Kevin Haig.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Whether this particular group of parents is going to receive that extra support that this new Part 7 would actually provide for. So I'll be looking forward to that answer, Mr. Chair. So I've spoken so far about needs that are associated with the shock of diagnosis, the shock of having a baby with such a severe impairment. Mr. Chair, it doesn't stop there. I've spoken about the incubators, about the machines, about the drugs. One of the consequences of that kind of intensive medical intervention that these babies sustain is that a parent's time to bond with their child is very much obstructed. It's obstructed by the walls of the incubator, by the machines that are keeping their child alive. And one of the particular purposes that jurisdictions around the world have recognised for extending parental leave is the particular purpose of improving or giving parents and their children the opportunity to bond. And so, Mr. Chair, this particular group of parents and this particular group of babies and children whose opportunity to bond in those early days and weeks is so compromised by the intensity of medical intervention do have a particular need to be able to take advantage of that opportunity to bond that an extended period of parental leave would provide for. And so, Mr. Chair, I come back to that question as to whether or not this group will be covered by that. I want to go on to mention, Mr. Chair, some of those other disabilities that can accompany these cardiac conditions that I've been speaking of. Because those can include learning disabilities, Mr. Chair, sensory disabilities, other disabilities that very clearly would be captured by the definition of impairment that applies to this new Part 7 that's proposed. But, Mr. Chair, it's very likely that those would not be diagnosed until such time as perhaps a child is engaging with the formal education system, perhaps in their before school check. And so we have a situation where a child clearly does fit any definition of impairment that was adopted, but the fact that they fit doesn't become clear until some later point. And so, Mr. Chair, I'd be very interested to hear the member and the Chair's account of what advice she has received about that kind of delayed diagnosis of impairment that clearly applies. I want to respond to a point made by Sarah Dowie earlier, because she addressed this point of cost. She raised the point of cost in the House and suggested that, of course, the extension that's proposed in this new Part 7 would be desirable, that everyone would support that. But unfortunately, the government couldn't afford to do that. Well, Mr. Chair, look, I'd be pleased to be corrected by the member and the Chair if this is the case. But my advice is that the cost of the particular extensions that are proposed in this new Part 7 is minimal in the scale of the total cost of paid parental leave. And the figures I have in front of me, sir, and these are rounded estimates, are for the 2015-16 year, an extra $6 million, followed in subsequent years by $4 million, $8 million, and then 9 million in the next 3 years, and taking through to 2020, 21, 22, an extra cost of $10 million. Well, Mr. Chair, against...
The Honourable Nanaia Mahuta.